to do their jobs. And if you can't trust them, then you have to find a way to make them do their jobs. And I believe that it's possible to make our representatives accountable, but it's a tough job. It's shows like this that throw some daylight on what they're doing that eventually, I think, have a good effect. But I don't see any other way to do it.
Any other questions?
It seems to me that this kind of asset forfeiture is so clearly against the Bill of Rights. There's not even any inclination to say that this is not government seizure. What is it about the civil defense or the judicial system that is so blinded to the obvious interpretation that there is a guaranteed freedom against government seizures when that's all they're doing?
They're not blinded. They're doing this intentionally, shamelessly.
No, that's not my question. How is it so hard for lawyers and property owners to simply articulate in the judicial system that this is against the First Amendment, or I think it's the Fifth Amendment, clearly violation of search and seizure, of illegal seizures of property by the government? It seems to me that you have to have some degree of compliance from within the civil legal system as well as the judicial system to allow this just to continue to mushroom in such an obvious fashion.
Well, in this area, in this particular area, the judicial system has really been shameless, because what they say is it's not against the Fifth Amendment. It's not against the Fourth Amendment. And when they get a case that it's so clearly against the law, then you'll find courts that literally misrepresent the facts before them and lie about the record before them and say, well, this is what the law says, but it doesn't apply here because these were the facts, when in fact those weren't the facts. They're truly shameless.
You know, another thing, the legislature is also very shameless about passing these laws. With law enforcement agencies getting to benefit directly from the proceeds of the forfeitures, you can bet every time there's a bill out there to make it illegal to do something, they're going to run in there and stick in a forfeiture provision. They're going to push that on through so they can get some money too.
And the police
Go ahead.
The police lobbying force in Sacramento, where we've been and at the federal level, is overwhelming, and they're usually on paid time.
Yes, sir.
They confiscate the land, and then they have a court proceeding, and then they take you to court again for criminal proceeding. Isn't that double jeopardy?
Well, that's one of the things that fortunately is starting to put a choke chain on some of these outrageous government activities. Hopefully the U.S. Supreme Court is going to rule pretty soon that that forfeiture, civil forfeiture, is punishment, and they can't both take your property and punish you in separate proceedings. But there's nothing to stop them from prosecuting you and your property in the same proceeding, and there are virtually no limits on that.
You know, I have an important point about that. Lately, the courts, in response to these double jeopardy challenges, which are sweeping around the country, and my friend Jeffrey here is really helping a lot, and I'm helping some, the courts have been saying that if you miss that deadline that we were talking about a minute ago, that 20-day deadline you have for filing a claim and paying that cost bond of 10% of the value of your property in order to fight to get it back. Let's say you miss it because you can't raise the 10% in that 20 days or find a lawyer. They say, well, in that case, you lose your property, but you weren't really punished because there was no court proceeding. And that's how they're getting around double jeopardy now.
Yes, sir, up there.
My question is for Jeffrey. What makes you say that there is not going to be a revolution?
Well, I think that's everybody's hope.
Right.
Well,
but you know what? There's already been a revolution. The federal government has had a revolution, a silent one, but a revolution nonetheless. They've taken the power from the people and given it to themselves. So we've had a revolution in this country. We just have to restore. Yes, sir.
Do you have cases where people work to expose what's going on in their local community and the police retaliate? Do you have any cases come to you?
Well, I think the police always look at you real carefully when you're a thorn in their side. If you're asking, do I know a specific case where somebody's been assassinated or impoverished because they're outspoken, in my jurisdiction I haven't seen many, but around the country I've seen a number of them.
Any other questions here? Oh, good. Look at all these questions we have. My goodness. You over there.
These seizure laws with the 25% bounty for the informant, does that apply to the IRS as well?
I don't know about IRS does have a bounty. I don't know if it's 25%. It may be 10.
You guys are fired.
We've been talking a lot about law enforcement officers coming and taking everything. When did the paradigm shift from having peace officers maintaining a peace and law enforcement officers going after all these laws? We're talking here about assets being taken and people being corrupted, police officers that we hold the highest trust, being corrupted, going out trying to achieve for all this. When did they go from just keeping the peace?
Very clearly, it started with the war on drugs, with prohibition.
Exactly.
It is the best vehicle you can think of for injecting the government into every aspect of your personal life and for getting the public to swallow the elimination of most of your civil rights.
And remember, police used to be called public servants. Now it's law enforcement. Yeah. Any other questions, ma'am?
I think maybe the solution would be to legalize drugs and let the potheads smoke.
You bet!
Amen. Amen.
I agree with you, but that won't end the forfeiture problem. Forfeiture has already expanded well beyond the drug war.
Yeah, but it'll solve a lot of other problems. They won't
Yes.
be able to plant evidence.
Yes.
But the monster
And
is
you own your life. If you want to cut off your arm, that's your business. If you want to smoke pot, that's your business. Whatever you want to do, it's your business, not theirs. You own your life. Every one of us own our lives. Let's not forget that. Now, a few days ago, something shocking came across my desk. A new bill, H.R. 1617, the Career Planning Act. Whew. And it's already been passed by both the House and the Senate. It's in committee now, waiting to go to President Clinton for his signature. Carolyn Steinke knows a lot about it. She's the executive director of Parents Involved in Education, and the facts she'll give you will prove that George Orwell's 1984 is only 12 years late. Carolyn, please be the first one to vent.
Thank you. Oh, it's so good to be here, and I am mad as hell because, Aaron, I am a mom with 7 children, and I had to take off my apron and leave my home and spend a lot of time getting to the bottom of why my children are not going to have a future.
Please explain to the audience.
Well, right now, children in this nation, as a matter of fact, in our wonderful United States, are scoring lower than third world nations when it comes to getting an academic education. And our children are systematically being dumbed down, and yet the blame is being placed on parents. And the reason for this is that the system that has been dumbing down our children needs to put the blame on parents and not on the real fact that they're not teaching our children anything.
But we know that problem. Tell us about H.R. 1617.
H.R. 1617 came to light when we realized that there was a plan. The reason why they are dumbing down our children is the Clintons' plan for human resource development. It is a plan in which the government has decided to join in a partnership with parents in the raising of their children.
Parents and the government are going to be a partnership?
Yes, 50% arrangement until a child, of course, has been designated at risk. Now, they call the plan cradle to grave. Cradle to grave, meaning that from the I call it sperm to worm. When the federal government finds out a child is conceived, that is the moment for assessing the parent. And from that time on, every child will be assessed, and they will be qualified, and they will be scrutinized. And if for any reason, according to the plan, these children are not meeting the criteria that the federal government has set for their well-being, which could be anything, we have that also, the at-risk designations could be anybody's child. The child of an obese parent, the child that has too few toys or too many toys, a child that was a low birth weight, 6 pounds. Do you know what that brings? That brings with it the federal government looking into your home unannounced 8 to 10 visits a year.
Wait,
to
what
monitor.
does that mean? They can just come knock on your door and walk in the house?
Absolutely. If your child has been designated at risk.
And who designates them at risk?
If they fall into the criteria, whoever is the case manager, the social worker, the person.
No!
Absolutely.
No!
Now, that's what we've been finding out. But then we take it a step further and we find out why. Why? Because this whole society is in the process of being recultured. And they say the reason for the Careers Act is that we need to change our labor force because it's so dumbed down, that we have to be able to be competitive in the new world. In the global market, we need global workers. Well, I'm telling you right now, Aaron, with the way this country is hemorrhaging and our manufacturing is going to other countries, the only way this human resource development, human beings who go to get a job are going to be competitive in a third world market is if they're going to work for 1/42nd of the normal wage. Now, the governing board at the federal level sets up a national plan for workforce development, a national employment agency, where all frontline jobs, public and private, must be reported. And all vacancies and anyone looking for work must report to the National Employment Agency.
So does that tie into the Feinstein bill with the Immigration Act that we have to go?
That's it in a nutshell. That's it. Now, they're totally radically restructuring education. And the plan, the legislation calls for integrating career-based curriculum at the earliest grades possible. Little kindergartners are now going to start talking about careers, and now they're going to start being investigated, analyzed, and surveyed as to what is their best potential for their future. And Aaron, guess what? Your children and my children and the children in this audience are going to now be picking their career for life and being trained specifically for that career by the 9th grade.
Not my children. Not my children.
Does this sound a little bit like the hammer and the sickle?
Well, I think, Carolyn, I thank you for coming here and telling us all this. I think Carolyn deserves a big round of applause. You know, no matter how deep I get into what's going on in America, I'm still amazed by the things I'm learning. And that's why I decided to do this show, so that we can all learn something together to stop this vulgarity and this deceit by our government. You know, this podium is your platform. So anybody else who wants to vent, please raise your hand. Please. Introduce yourself, please.
Hi, Aaron. I'm Julian Whitaker, and I'm a medical doctor. I've been practicing in the state of California for about 20 years. Been very active in medical freedom. I practice what you call alternative medicine, which I don't call alternative medicine. I just call good medicine because we use vitamins and minerals and things of this nature. I've been following the FDA. I've been involved in several lawsuits against the FDA with vitamins and minerals. However, there's something going on in Houston, Texas right now, which amounts to a cultural rape. There's a physician there by the name of Stanislaus Brzezinski. And I've been hearing about Stanislaus Brzezinski treating cancer. Basically, he has found a definite method and cure for cancer by isolating naturally occurring particles from the blood that get into the cell and turn off the genetic activity that causes cancer to progress. I have visited his clinic on 2 occasions. I've gone over terminal brain cancer patients that never, ever regress or never go into remission. They go into complete remission. There's a case in San Francisco of a 4-year-old girl who had a rhabdoid tumor of the brain, the most deadly tumor in childhood, 52 cases reported. Average lifespan is 8 months. She lived 2.5 years, and she died not from cancer, but from the radiation and chemotherapy she had before she had this therapy. Now, I've talked to leukemia patients and lymphoma patients, complete remission. And it makes sense. Now, let me finish this. It makes sense because these particles go in and activate or deactivate the tumor or suppressor genes and the oncogenes. It requires a paradigm shift in cancer. Now, why I'm here is this. In 1983, the American Cancer Society put this on an unproven blacklist. 2 months later, the FDA filed suit in federal court in Houston in 1983 to put Stanislaus Brzezinski out of business and to destroy his discovery. The judge ruled against the FDA. Robert Spiller, the enforcement officer of the FDA at that time, says, we're going to get this man. We're going to use a grand jury system. From 1983 until 1995, they convened 4 grand juries. They raided the clinic dozens of times. They've confiscated 1 million documents, including all of his medical records, which he had to go and copy. I visited the clinic, and I noticed where he has a pharmaceutical wing, 47,000 feet, which is under the direction, or rather under the direction of the FDA for standards and procedures, where he gets high marks. But the enforcement arm of the FDA is about to destroy the man. I'm not nearly as concerned about the man as I am about the loss of the discovery. We have not made any progress in cancer in 100 years. We have a definite, unquestioned breakthrough with a non-toxic therapy in cancer. And he has now got 75 counts. They just came down in November. 75 counts of indictment. All of them stemming from a victimless crime of whether or not he is exporting across state lines his therapy. You see, in 1983, the judge says, Dr. Brzezinski, you can practice medicine, you can do what you want to, but you can do it only in the state of Texas. You cannot enter into interstate commerce with your product. He said, fine. But unfortunately, when someone in Oklahoma gets a brain tumor, or someone in New York gets a pancreatic tumor, or a child in California gets a brain tumor, and they hear of him and they go, they treat them, they take the medication and travel themselves, which is not interstate commerce. So the entire charade for destroying this man, and not just this man, but the discovery of which nobody here knows about, is interstate commerce.
Well, let me ask you a question. Why is it in their interest to stop a cancer cure? Why is this happening in your mind?
Well, there's 2 answers to that. The first answer is this. Whenever there's been a discovery, whether the earth is round, whether it's antibiotics, whether it's past years of germ theory, it doesn't matter. Whenever there is a true discovery in any culture that requires a shift of paradigms, the paradigm we have in cancer now is you cut, burn out. This paradigm is you stop it at the genetic level. You don't have to cut, you don't have to burn. All of that, the billions of dollars of industry, goes down the drain. So there's 3 areas of resistance to this. There's the government, which is illegalizing it. There is the oncologists, which are hot and bothered because he represents a challenge to their belief system. And then there's the insurance company, which basically is governed by the physicians. So of those 3 interests, they're all working in concert, but the most serious is the federal government, because they could simply illegalize it and put the man in jail. So that's the first element, is that you have this with every single discovery. No discovery is ever accepted, because any kind of progress always requires taking a view of reality which is wrong, replacing it with a view of reality which is more accurate, and moving from that view of reality more accurate. And my interviewing of dozens of oncologists, they're united against him.
Would it be possible to bring Doctor to the show here one day?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to vent? Senator Rogers.
Thank you, Aaron. And I'm mad, and let me tell you why.
Please.
I'm mad because the federal government has literally turned their back on not only California, but all the border states. And let me tell you what I'm talking about. Every night, several thousand people enter into our state illegally. They break our law. They're illegal aliens. They come across the border almost unrestricted. 80% of every newborn child in Los Angeles County is born of an illegal alien parent. and the California taxpayer is picking up the tab. Now, I'm mad because the voters, Article 1, Section 4 of the Constitution, and I wish some of the federal judges would read it once in a while.
That's a far...
I guess so. It says clearly, it clearly says that the federal government is charged with the responsibility of protecting the individual states from invasion. We are being invaded. California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Florida, literally being invaded by people who break our law and come into our state illegally. Now, 15 months ago, the people in the state voted, 59% voted for a proposition called 187. A federal judge, one judge appointed by Jimmy Carter, has put a stop to what the people in California clearly support.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, what we need to do is, of course, I'm thinking maybe we ought to put a term limit on federal judges, folks, rather than lifetime. It is not fair to the people in California. What's happening? We are required, according to this federal judge, to provide free welfare services, free medical care, and a free public education to all of these people that come in and break our law and come into the state illegally. And it's time that we told the federal government, look, you either do it or we're going to do it.
Amen.
Now, the federal judge, let me tell you how contorted her reasoning was in using the Constitution. She said, well, Prop 187, you are making immigration law, and that is the area for the federal government. That's not what 187 was about. 187 was merely saying the state of California has the right to remove the incentives that are acting like a magnet that are drawing these people into our state. That's all 187 does.
Right.
It doesn't monkey with immigration law. So it's time that we put a stop to it, that we reaffirm the sovereignty of the state of California, and we do what we know we have to do to spare and preserve and rescue the taxpayers in this state. I'm mad.
Who else would like to vent? Who's got it? I see a lot of us. I don't know if we can go with as many people. You know, how about you, Senator Duke? You have anything for us? Please introduce yourself.
Okay, well, I'm Charles Duke, state senator from the state of Colorado. And I'm very happy to be here today, Aaron, and I'm mad as well, like many of the people here.
Are you mad as well or mad as hell? Which one?
Mad as well. I'm mad about the loss of our Constitution, as you well know, and I'm mad about a $5 trillion debt, and just a number of things, not to mention the property seizure law that you've talked about tonight. That's really one of the many reasons that I carried the nation's first 10th Amendment resolution. And that resolution restores to the states the power that I believe rightfully belonged to them all along,
Absolutely.
but has been stolen from us by this rogue Congress. Now, that resolution had two parts. It said, first, the state of Colorado hereby claims sovereignty over all powers not otherwise enumerated and granted to the federal government by the United States Constitution. It's based on the 10th Amendment, which says the states have any power they wish to have unless it's prohibited. The second part reminded the federal government that they're our agent, and it says that the federal government as our agent is hereby given notice and demand to cease and desist, effective immediately, mandates that are beyond the scope of the constitutionally delegated powers. Colorado wasn't asking the federal government for anything. We were telling them the way it is. Now, I was a little unprepared for what happened after I did that. I really kind of did it initially, not only to support the Constitution, but primarily for fun. Well, it really took off across the nation, and in fact, Senator Rogers sponsored SDR 44 here in California, and that has passed as well. To date, we have 21 states that have passed that 10th Amendment resolution.
Yes! Yes! Yes!
Now, some have said, where are you going with this, Charlie? What exactly are you trying to achieve? And I said, well, let's suppose we get 38 states to adopt the 10th Amendment resolution, and we call a meeting of those 38 states, and we draft some orders for Congress. And we hand it to the Congress, and we say, here are your orders. You are our agent. You have 90 days. And they'll say, or what? And we will say, or your services are terminated. And there will be new elections to replace you. Now, there are good things happening in our government, some of them at the state legislative level, even one at the national federal level. Because in Montana there was a bill, didn't pass, but I'm sure it'll be introduced again, to require any federal agent to register with the local sheriff.
Oh, great.
You might be very surprised to know that the Supreme Court has ruled on more than one occasion that the federal government has no police power.
Right.
So they can't go to the federal government for help there. In any case, I'll be introducing that in Colorado. And Senator Rogers has told me if I'll get the data to him, he'll introduce it for the state of California.
Yes!
There really is a revolution underway in this country. It's not the one Newt Gingrich thinks it is. It's in the minds of the people, and we are going to reclaim this government. I think the framers of our Constitution properly did understand what 1996 was about. The challenge for us is to understand what 1776 was about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Here's a remarkable friend of mine who I love dearly and who's given a lot of thought to the subjects we've been speaking about tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, please, Rod Taylor.
I'm here to talk to you about the problem of slavery. It didn't end in the 1860s. It's a social malady that's with us today, and it's increasing in its scope and virulence. The desire to enslave our fellow man is unfortunately intrinsic to the human character. It has been with us since the beginning of time, on every continent and in virtually every culture, from ancient Egypt to Babylon to Greece and Rome, Africa, Asia, Europe, and the United States. Germany and Japan openly practiced widespread slavery only 50 years ago, and the Soviet Union until less than a decade ago. China even today. It's a disease of our human nature, and yet people are under the impression that it no longer exists. I say to you that in a subtle form it exists in America today, and it's becoming less subtle and more manifest. Madison Avenue has just cleaned it up a little bit, dressed it up in new words. The slave master is now Big Brother, someone to protect you, someone to confide in. But it's all the same. He owns your life. Now, this may sound far-fetched, but I think I can prove it. When the IRS allows you a tax deduction, they and their congressional collaborators and the media call it a tax subsidy. In other words, they designate it as a gift to you, a subsidy. The only way they could conceive this terminology is by presupposing that they, i.e. the government, own all the money. Their view is that they're entitled to it all. That which they allow you to keep is their compassionate and generous gift to you. How can this be? You create the money by your efforts, your sacrifice, your creativity, your risk-taking. So how can it belong to them? It's very simple. They own you. They own everything you produce, your money, your house, your thoughts and ideas, your children. If you go to a foreign country to work, you still have to pay the U.S. income tax. You could dig a hole in the middle of Siberia and they'd be entitled to a cut of your wages because in their minds, under their law, they own you. They create arcane and esoteric laws to criminalize you. You may try, but you can't obey them. You can't even understand them without a lot of professional help. You have to run around slavishly collecting little pieces of paper, receipts, 7 years of detailed financial records because you might be called on to give an account of yourself to the big boss man. And if you've made a mistake, he can take everything you have. He loves it that way. That's total power over you, slavery. I don't remember when we, the people, signed over ownership of ourselves. It just gradually happened by them taking more and more of our freedom. But here's the worst part. It's really only just begun. In this modern age, the information age, getting your money is not enough, even though money, don't let anyone deceive you, is the material source of your freedom. Now, however, they want your mind. If you deviate in your thinking, if you commit one of the 10,000 taboos, and they perceive your actions as a threat, they'll come out and kill you. It was the thought police who killed the children at Waco and Ruby Ridge. Neither David Koresh nor Randy Weaver, whatever things might be said about them, had ever mugged anyone, robbed a 7-Eleven, or committed forcible rape or murder. But they did have unorthodox views, and therefore it was necessary to round them up and deal with them. Whatever their crimes were, they could have been arrested and tried openly in a court of law. But that was not the aim of certain factions in the government. These statists wanted a massive demonstration of force to show who was boss. The penalty for resisting is death. After all, we're not free. We belong to the government, and deviant thoughts will not be tolerated. In the aftermath of the horrible Oklahoma City bombing, government propagandists tried to intimidate the people into silence by recklessly linking criticism of the government to acts of murder. Some people ask, how can you fear your government and claim to love your country? Our response is, how can you love your country without fearing your government? Who else holds a counterfeit license to kill, incarcerate, and confiscate for non-crimes? Remember, America is about liberty first and last, not obedience to bureaucrats. The Washington power clique wants you to shut up, get in line, do what you're told to do, and most outrageously, think what you've been told to think. We have hundreds of politicians and thousands of lobbyists crawling all over Washington, thinking of ways to control you, to extend their will over you, to subvert your freedom and replace it with their will, to capture, that is, to steal your life force. And so we should all be very angry, because anger is the engine that drives our will to resist. And without resistance, without awareness, they will take it all. That's not just politically perverse, it's a sin against mankind, because freedom is actually sacred. Drop an ant into a jar and seal the lid. It will spend the rest of its life trying to get out. It has nowhere to go, but it wants to be free. That is its nature. It's the way every living thing is made. Once, a long time ago, I saw something at the zoo, a wolf lying in its cage. I thought about how this magnificent animal was the end product of millions of years of evolutionary design. A nose that could detect the faintest scent, ultrasonic hearing, eyes that could see in the dark, teeth and jaws capable of crushing thick bone, heart and lungs that could run him for hours in a sub-zero blizzard. And yet there he was, lying forlorn and full of despair. He was well fed. He had a clean habitat and water and medical care. So what was the problem? He was sick with the knowledge that his wonderful powers would never be exercised again. And so he lay there, his head on his paws, staring blankly ahead at perhaps some imaginary forest that he could never reach because there were bars around him. They had not killed his body, but they were destroying his soul. God gave Adam and Eve freedom, even though he knew they would invite death into the world. That's how important freedom is in the divine scheme of things, and that's why we urge you to defend it always.
I've often wondered what George Washington, Sam Adams, and Thomas Jefferson would do if they were alive today. Not much. They would have been in jail. You know, a lot of intelligent people warned me not to do this show. Said I was putting myself in danger. But that's precisely why I'm here today. I refuse to live in fear of my government. We have to take personal responsibility for our lives. They think of us as statistics. They lump us together in groups. 65% of the blacks think like this. 75% of the women think like that. 27% of the Jews think this way. And 61% of the Christians think that way. 50% of the men think this way. And out of that 50%, 46% of the circumcised ones think another way. It's all bullshit! There are no groups! We're individuals! Group thinking is no thinking. It's black against white, rich over poor, straight opposing gay, men versus women, rancher against rapper. It's only as individuals that we will ever find harmony and peace. Bill Clinton and I are both white, straight, male Americans. That's 4 groups we share. But do I think like Bill Clinton? I can't stand Bill Clinton. I am Aaron Russo before I'm white, before I'm Jewish, before I'm an American. I can't think like all Jews, or all white people, or all Americans. It's not possible. Divide and conquer. It's an old formula. Folks, we've been splintered. My hope is, God, I pray, my hope is that this show, this series, can bring all these splinters together into a strong oak tree that can withstand the assaults that we're under. So we can once again make our common thread freedom of the individual. So we can all be different and still defend each other's rights and appreciate our differences. That's what it's all about. And if you don't allow freedom, if any of you don't allow freedom for somebody else, then you can't have freedom. Do you understand that? We don't have much time, folks. The free America that we all knew and loved may be gone forever. That's frightening. That's damn frightening. It's time for all of us to stand up and say, no matter what my gender, my race, my age, my education, or economic level, rich or poor. I am first a human being. And I'm ready to start behaving like one again. I open up my arms and my heart and respect every other person in this country. No more labels to separate us. No more judging each other. Live and let live. We are going to reclaim America's ideals of brotherhood and liberty for everyone. That's our greatest legacy. I want all of you who feel as I do to send me letters and faxes, email me. Tell your friends to join us in this crusade for freedom. This will be the largest crusade in the history of America, and a direct challenge to the status quo. And Washington damn well knows it. Make them understand that we, the people, are the sovereigns, not them. We love you, Ed. Come on, everybody. America. Recently, the Associated Press reported the results of a national poll asking Americans if they trusted their government. 70% did not. One of the reasons this figure is so high is people are becoming more aware that we have all but lost our rights to due process and the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. A man's home is no longer his castle.